Okay.
People were saying that this property was haunted. He saw black hands handing him a rifle, and they told him to kill him. And he heard a voice scream at him, "Get out." He was the only one in the house doing it. They arrest him. He wakes up. He has no recollection of anything, couldn't even tell you what happened, where, couldn't recognize anything.
A haunting was a material defect that had to be disclosed to the buyer. Believe that there are forces and powers at work in the world that are beyond our control.
But we will agree that they've not been successful in court. So
the
the demons need better lawyers. Attorney Michael Dye, welcome back.
Welcome to Two Taps and Friends. Grab your favorite drink, get comfy, and let's dive into another episode of Two Taps and Friends.
Welcome back to Two Taps and Friends. I'm Daniel Rosenberg, the host of your show. Today I have one of my favorite, probably a co-host I would call him at this point, Michael Dye. Attorney Michael Dye, welcome back. So today, coming up, Halloween's coming up. I thought we'd do something cool, try to tie it to the legal world a little bit, Halloween's one of my favorite holidays. I don't know what your take on Halloween is. You like Halloween or not really?
I don't know. I'm indifferent. I dress up in the same costume every year.
All right, well, I got your take on Halloween then, okay? Because I don't do that. But anyway, I think that the new Conjuring movie's coming out. It's out right now. I don't know if you watch those movies, but I like those movies. Huh?
My son does.
Yeah, I like those movies. But, they're very dramatized and movie-like. But I always found fascinating the tie-in with the legal world, right? And the last Conjuring, they talked about a tie-in with. Well, let's start off with the first case. I remember in law school. Do you remember the Ghostbuster case in law school? They called it
the Amityville Horror.
Yes.
Yeah.
So just premise: Amityville Horror. The background is it got an issue regarding the house, which we're going to go into detail right now. And got in front of the Supreme Court case, U.S. Supreme Court, to rule on a case.
New York Supreme Court of Appeals. So it
Then
wasn't the
didn't it?
U.S. Supreme Court.
It didn't get there?
No. It was.
Anyway, oh, you're right. So it didn't get all the way to U.S., but it got high, okay? And so we had to learn about it in law school. We'll get to why it got to court first, but let's give background on the case. First of all, Amityville Horror was a movie. It was also a true story. There was a murder there, and it was based on a true story, the Amityville Horror House. Dan, can you put up the photo of the house itself? So it's in Long Island in the town called Amityville. This is the house, and it was owned. The mysticism behind, the allegations this house was haunted. And let's start where it starts. First of all, it starts off with the Defect family. I think maybe we should give the background first.
Okay.
People were saying that this property was haunted. The traces go back to spirits being on the Native American, the Montacats Indians who believed in demons, saying that on these lands, there was a lot of demon worshiping, or not demon worshiping, a lot of demon action and that kind of stuff. Also, another guy, John Ketchum, who was, burned at the stake during the Salem witch trials, that he somehow was in this area at some point and had been doing witchcraft, had lived on this property, which was all kinds of rumors and myths about why there's some kind of alleged possession or not possession or, paranormal activity at this house. But in I think the year was for the Defect murders, it was 1965, a family called the Defect family moved into this house. The house was the father, the mother, there was 5 children in total. The eldest son was called Ronald Defect Jr. If you guys can put up the photo of Ronald Defect Jr. Ronald Defect Jr. in the middle of the night woke up with a shotgun. It's a horrible story. Went around and he executed his parents in the bed, and then he went room to room and executed both his brothers, executed both his sisters, or one brother, or 2 sisters, executed them in a gruesome murder. And the reason why it became the stuff of paranormal is his claim was that he was possessed by a demon and that he didn't remember doing any of it. Saying that, he felt, I think his quote was that he saw black hands handing him a rifle, and they told him to kill him. And he claimed this as he was being arrested. and it didn't work, to say the least. You know, he got convicted in trial. I believe, was he sentenced to life, or what happened with him?
Yeah, I believe he's sentenced to life. I don't think New York has the death
I
penalty.
think he got 6 consecutive life sentences is what happened, all right? So
I'm
that came
shocked
up-
it didn't work. I mean,
Exactly.
that's a great defense.
Exactly. But the next family that moves in, the Lutz family, really brings attention to the house because, you know, he claimed the demon possession. The rumor went around on the island, and rumor went around all over about it being possessed, and that's when they started talking about all these Native American things and this John Ketchum guy. But the Lutz family comes in there. They move in 1975, and they report all kinds of things. With long story short on that, they just rush out of the house 28 days later. They flee in the middle of the night, never come back and try to sell the house. What they were saying in this house was that all kinds of things. They first thing when they moved in, they say that when they moved in the house, they brought a preacher over because they heard about what happened in the house and they wanted to get all these, you know, bad energy out. So they called the preacher over. Preacher comes over, says stuff like the house was super cold, especially in the sewing room. They keep referencing the sewing room. He says that he heard a voice scream at him, "Get out." He was the only one in the house doing it. He also says that he was slapped in the face, doesn't know by who or where, freaks out about it, mentions it to the family. Needless to say, they keep trying to live in the household. They starts off hearing scraping, they hear banging, they hear it's cold in rooms that shouldn't be cold. They start to say the family's personality starts to change. Look, this is all, you could be skeptical about this, of course, right? I am when I hear some of this stuff as well. You know, they would say that in that sewing room that the preacher mentioned, it would just be insane amounts of flies, like, you know, freaky, like infestation of flies. At one point, I think the mom says she finds like a room behind the shelving of like a red room, a little small red room that was hidden. And they think that there was some kind of devil worshiping going on in there at some point. Their dog would not come near the room, would growl. They all say that at 3:15 a.m. they would spring up in the middle of the night every night, all of them. They couldn't figure out why. It turns out the Feo murders happened at 3:15 a.m. So all this stuff is there, right? So they rush out of the house. They leave the house. They don't ever come back. The issue becomes, where it becomes legal, right, is at some point, I'm not sure how many families later, the family...
I think it was the next one.
Maybe it was the next one. I'm trying to see if there's anything else I missed here. Oh, they would see eyes. This is the Lutz family. They would see eyes looking in from the outside in, and sometimes when they were coming home, they would see eyes looking out. All kinds of stuff. It brought the attention of the Warrens, Ed and Lorraine Warren, which some people would recognize that name. Most people would. That's the people behind the Conjuring stories. These were, you know, the Ed Warren was they called him a demonologist. The church recognized him, right? Is that what it was? Demonologist?
I don't know what church it was.
Well, it was the Catholic Church. Allegedly, this is what it says on their stuff, when you're doing research on them. And then Lorraine Warren was a clairvoyant, they call her, or a medium. She could sense energies, and according to her, and they were in the midst of all of the most popular paranormal cases. There was one in England. There's one Amityville. They were involved in Amityville. They're also involved in another case we're going to talk about. So it brought the attention to them, and they testify. You can look this up about all kinds of stuff that happened in the house. They mentioned it having really bad energy, really scary stuff. Can you pull up that picture of the kid in the photo, Dan, if you don't mind? So this is a photo where they're all, I don't know who took the photo, but they're claiming that no kid lived in the house at this time, that this kid should not have been there. Obviously, I'm very skeptical, right? As I looked at the photo, it looks like a picture of a kid is what it looks like. The eyes, you see that can happen with flash and all kinds of stuff. But they claim that this was evidence of paranormal activity as well. Either way, it becomes a very, very famous hub and spot as a haunted house, right? So I believe the next family, the family afterwards, purchases the home. They don't know of this haunting, or at least they claim that,
the
right?
The important part was that they were not local. They were from out of town.
Right.
So they didn't know the local legends about the house.
Right. And what year? Do you know what year this happened? We don't know. I don't know. We didn't miss that. So they didn't know the local legend. And at that time, in their defense, there was no social media. You basically, unless you made the national papers, right?
The problem is that the owners of the house had gone ahead and sold their story to Reader's Digest.
Right, we'll get to that. But hold on, but I'm talking about the purchaser themselves, right? The
Yeah.
purchaser may not have known about this house, right? You agree with that? Because
Yeah, I agree
at
with
the
that.
time, there's no social media unless you're making world news, which I don't know how pervasive it was, but then you probably don't know. They purchased a home, and it becomes, they find out later, they start having some of this, they start experiencing paranormal activity, some disturbing stuff. I don't know the details. You read about what details they said?
They were talking about like poltergeists, and poltergeist is a combination of two German words. I think it's like polter is noisy and geist is ghost, so it's noisy ghosts where they move things and throw things and make noise. So they were saying that there were poltergeists in the house, the bed rattling. I remember that one specifically, that one of the ghosts grabbed the daughter's bed and started rattling the bed.
Wow.
It had to, a lot of it had to do with basically things that go bump in the night, things moving, noises, screaming, stuff like that.
Right. So it must have been bad enough to where they were trying. And you know how long they lived in the house before they tried to get out of the sale?
I think it was about a month.
So a month, and it reaches a fever pitch. Now, mind you, this is a really nice house in Long Island, in a nice neighborhood on the water. I mean, this is a nice house. This is not like some like beat up old bad neighborhood house. It's a really exclusive house. So it is a little weird that they're trying to sell the house. It could be maybe, you would think that they must have experienced something that scared them that bad. But then again, maybe they just caught wind of what they heard and didn't want to have anything to do with it.
Either that or they got in there and it just wasn't what they wanted. And,
Could be, right? We're not here to, could be. But they try to get out of the sale of the home. You want to take them through the procedure on that one?
So when you buy a house, or actually, did they even move into the house? I don't remember those.
I know they moved in. I think they moved
Okay, so they were seeking what's called a rescission, or if you sign a contract for the house and you want out of it, you can try to rescind the contract. But in order to get out of the contract, you have to show that the person essentially made a material misrepresentation as to defects in the house.
that are hidden.
Yeah.
That's the key, right? That are hidden, meaning, sorry, I'm going to give context if you don't mind me jumping in. So if I walk around the house and you do an inspection, you see a hole here, you see a hole there, something's not working, that's on you to pick up on, right? The owner of the house doesn't have to tell you for selling it, the seller of the house. Now, if there's something wrong with the piping, if there's something wrong with the electrical, something that they is not readily able to see, or something maybe even that inspectors wouldn't pick up on, you have a duty to disclose that to the purchaser. And I think, is murder one of those? If somebody was murdered in the house?
Actually, there was a lot of legislation that got passed after this.
Right.
So what happened is they sought to rescind the contract. The sellers of it obviously wanted to keep them in the contract. And the doctrine was like, in the law school words, a caveat emptor.
Right, but hold on. They sought to rescind it based on the principle that this was a hidden defect in the home.
Defect.
A latent defect. That's the proper legal terminology. A latent defect in the home that should have been disclosed to them prior to making the purchase, because obviously this kind of thing could affect, greatly affect the value of the home. But go ahead.
Well, that was the weird part, is that typically for latent defects, it's the caveat emptor was the buyer beware.
Right.
Is the doctrine. So typically they wouldn't have been allowed to rescind the contract for the latent defect unless the defect's not latent, meaning it was a defect that was known to the parties that that's going to affect the value of the house, and they should have disclosed the defect to the buyers.
Right.
All right. So
So they claim that's the case here based on it being haunted, right? So talk about the procedure, where it went to and how it went with the courts, and we'll break it down
so
some more.
I don't know how it went in the trial court.
Well,
to
the
be
trial
honest.
court denied it.
But in the Court of Appeals, which was the Supreme Court of New York Court of Appeals, which is the second level, like it would be our district court of appeals here, And they went ahead and they said that a haunting was a material defect that had to be disclosed to the buyer.
Well, what was cool about it was that, so it went up, just for the layman to understand, when a trial court hears an issue, the first court, they listen to the parties, they determine, and the argument was, look, this was a latent defect, it should have been disclosed. If you agree that it was a latent defect, it wasn't disclosed, there's the proof that it wasn't disclosed, and you got to bring your own evidentiary thing for that, you should rescind the contract. And that's legal talk for just, the contract should be void, I shouldn't have to own this home, it's back to the buyer, right? So the trial court, the first level said, yeah, no, this doesn't meet the criteria for a latent defect. Are you sure it wasn't just a U.S. Supreme Court?
I'm positive
All right.
it wasn't.
So the first level said no. But then the losing party, the owner, the attorneys for the sellers, appealed that decision. And what does that mean? They say, you know what? We think the trial court erred, and in the error, you're allowed to then go, and the higher court can go review the issue as well. So yeah, so the appellate court was reviewing it for the, and to review whether the judge was correct in calling it a latent defect, not calling it a latent defect. So they went and reviewed it, and they put a really big, funny finding out on it. What was the terminology that they said? What was their finding?
You have it written?
No, but either way, they didn't say that hauntings were real, right? But their thing was, they have an excerpt that people read over and over again saying basically that we can't discount paranormal activity, we can't discount haunting, we can't say for a fact that ghosts are real or not real, but we do think that this was a latent defect. But the important part is the rationale really wasn't so much about the ghosts and the haunting, but the pervasiveness and like the amount of the way that I guess the owner had held this home out as haunted, and it had been on, they mentioned it being on all kinds of shows, the paranormal shows and all this, that it was such a big thing for the owner, and they've been putting it out there so much that this is something that should have been disclosed to the owner.
That they were stopped from saying that the house was not haunted because they'd gone ahead and said it was haunted so many times. They've been on shows. They sold the story to Reader's Digest, which back then was a big deal. And so for them to come into court now and say that the house wasn't haunted, the court wasn't going to hear it. But again, it had more to do with the reputation of the house affecting its value.
Right. But a lot of people use that as hey, look, the court recognized hauntings and ghosts, So it was just an interesting case where literally they got out of the contract. Like that contract was void. They didn't, they got out of the sale. They didn't have to live there anymore. And that person was back stuck in the house. Nowadays, people would buy just because it was haunted,
Yeah, exactly.
But it's still and it became a movie. I think it was part of like Conjuring 2. They showed the DeFeo murders at the beginning. And look, we could break this apart, like the haunting thing. Like I'm not going to say I don't believe in ghosts. I'm not going to say I don't believe in paranormal. I've seen some crazy things before. I don't know. I can't answer it. But this story is pretty you could break this story down a lot, this haunting right here. It was the DeFeo murder is being possessed. Like this guy was a troubled guy, this Ronald DeFeo Jr., if you do a little bit of digging into him. And apparently he threatened to kill his family over and over again. It wasn't something new. But, the writing was on the wall, They
just didn't take him seriously.
They didn't take him seriously.
He's threatening to kill us again.
Right. So, nonetheless, people still travel to the house a lot, and they visit the home, and it's a big thing for people to go watch, and teenagers like to go and go to the haunted spot and all that kind of stuff. So it's a very popular thing. So that was one of the major cases where they talked about hauntings, but it was a little bit more intricate. I don't have the exact room, but they went into like ghouls and ghosts, and they did a whole thing. In law school, they call it the Ghostbuster case because they teach all lawyers in law school. It's a great example of how to teach what a latent defect is in property law. So that's very interesting, right? Another case that transitioned to another case where this happened again involved the Warren family, and that's the case of Orange Cheyenne Johnson. Right? This was, I don't remember I think it was 81, right?
The devil made me do it.
The devil made me do it case, we call it, right? Because we say that because in Conjuring, in I think it was the third Conjuring, they covered this case. This is a case where a guy, Orange Cheyenne Johnson, was his girlfriend's house, was at his girlfriend's house, and they believed that her younger brother had gotten possessed, and they were doing an exorcism. Literally, the Catholic Church was... That's another conversation about Catholic Church and exorcism. We're going to talk about that because you're my Christian expert, right?
So all denominations Christian.
Yeah, what's the deal? The Catholic Church recognizes demons and I mean, if you believe in God, you must believe in the devil, right?
Well, yes and no, but it's... I'm not Catholic, but I've been around it long enough. My kid goes to Catholic school. I did too. So, yes, the Catholic Church will perform exorcisms, but it's not as simple as going down to your local priest and being like, my kid's possessed by a demon.
Right,
there
right.
has to be like investigations on investigations and then they hire psychiatrists and they
You have
look
to
at
pass the test.
everything to make sure that there's no other explanation for it but demonic possession.
But they do recognize there are demonic possessions.
Yes. And most
Is that
Christians
just a Catholic? It's a Christian.
No, it's a Christian thing. I mean, there are some,
Well, Judaism has it too, but go ahead.
yeah, well, there's some denominations in Christianity where they, more the liberal denominations where they just say, that demons are just a way of explaining bad things happening and the devil really doesn't exist. Those are a lot more of the new liberal type churches. That's like a new theology that really doesn't have much basis in scripture.
Right.
But then most of the more established denominations do believe that there are, let's just say, powers of evil that are outside of the normal.
Right. Well, the Jews have the Dibuk. You ever heard of that?
No.
The Dibuk is the Jews believe in demons as well. And there's a Dibuk box. I believe it's called Dibuk box. Yeah. Where there's box that they trap the demon in. The rabbis will do a prayer. It's an older than time thing. So all this stuff is out there.
Yeah,
and,
so
and
you could
there's-
shove my ex-wife in a box.
Yeah,
and-
we have the right rabbi, right? We got to find the right rabbi. But yeah, so and I mean, I think it's a fascinating topic. I always like it. I enjoy it. I don't know how much I believe in all of it. I don't know that I disbelieve it. I don't know, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, the devil made me do. This guy, Orange Cheyenne Johnson, the younger brother of his girlfriend, is possessed, and some pretty significant stuff, like, he's speaking in tongue and all this kind of scary stuff that is kind of hard to explain, right? So the Catholic Church, it passed muster because they sent out a preacher to do an exorcism, and they were holding the kid down, and he says at one point that when he held the kid down, the boyfriend looked this demon in the eye and said, "Get out of this little kid and come in me," or something like that. And the family... Yeah, the family come inside. Okay, it's just gonna get worse, right? Possess me, right? So the family, I can't do this with you. The family literally say that at that moment, there was some like dramatic event, and then the kid was not possessed, and it all ended, and they ended the exorcism, right? So this kid, the guy Arn, is maintaining that he started having really weird episodes. Like he would have blackout sessions. He wouldn't remember things. He would start saying things. His girlfriend attests to it as well. He ends up getting into an argument with his landlord, who was one of his friends, actually. He was renting a place. And in the middle of it, I think the witnesses there say that out of nowhere, he goes and he stabs a guy like a lot of times and they all describe him as being possessed, not there. They arrest him. He wakes up. He has no recollection of anything. Couldn't even tell you what happened, where. Couldn't recognize anything. So, of course, law enforcement's skeptical. They don't buy it. They charge him with murder. Goes to trial. His trial team comes, and he explains it all. They do their investigating. They speak to the preacher. They speak to all the people that were there at this exorcism, and they find it compelling, right? They're like, they can't discount it. So what they do is they decide that we're going to mount a defense. We're going to claim temporary insanity due to demonic possession. And they literally pled that, right? Not happened in court that I know of, in modern court. Might have happened with the Salem witch hunts and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure it probably came up here and there, but not done as a defense. Pleading temporary insanity in general, coming from two trial lawyers, is a very, very difficult standard.
It's a slow guilty plea.
It's very hard. I mean, listen, I just had one not guilty I had the state agree to one, a not guilty by insanity. I didn't do it. Another lawyer, but I was working with them, got it in Miami. It was crazy. I'd never seen that before. But it's very hard to do. It's like a unicorn for defense attorneys, right? Much less demonic possession, right? That's like you're really taking it to another thing. So the media jumps all over it, eating it alive. They do their investigating, and it's sensationalism, so it blew up in a big way. I think at some point, that's where the argument was made. In the jury selection, they said, what did they say about God and the devil? If you believe, did you
Yeah,
read
it was,
that?
it was something
I remember what
about,
it was.
they were asking questions about if people believed in God and the devil and demons. And
Well, they said, if you believe in God, they went through and picked the jury. Do you believe in God? Are you a Christian? Well, if you believe in God, you inevitably believe in the devil. Yeah. And if you believe in the devil, it's not such a far stretch to believe in demons and possession, right?
Yeah.
Judge wasn't having that, right? The judge was like literally, everybody was resisting them all along the way. They kept making arguments for days about it. They were trying to question witnesses based on it. They were trying to put up witnesses, but the judge, at some point, the prosecution made a ruling or filed a motion to exclude that kind of evidence.
Yeah.
They excluded the evidence. Guy got found guilty, got sentenced to 20 years in prison. And the craziest thing is the guy served 5 years and then got out on good behavior, right? So he's a free man today, this guy, you know what I mean? So what's your commentary there on that?
You know,
case?
here's the thing. In criminal defense, a lot of people, they come up like the Twinkie defense, and there's really not that many defenses
Poppy
in criminal
seed
law.
bagels.
Yeah, poppy seed bagel defense.
Maybe become positive for opiates.
The
Yeah.
everything bagel when he tests positive for cocaine.
Yeah, I got the everything bagel. I ate everything bagel, Your Honor.
So, there's didn't do it, didn't mean to do it, or crazy. Those are the only three defenses.
Right.
All right. So, you can come up with all sorts of varying factual scenarios, but those are the three things. That's all there is to argue. Didn't do it, didn't mean to do it, or crazy. So when they're arguing demonic possession, all right, that obviously if people saw you doing it, it was your body, so you did it, all right, and you didn't mean to do it. I don't think that really applied there. Or, it could, but no, they're not going to recognize demonic possession as, oops.
Right.
And so the only thing left to argue is crazy. Now, you don't necessarily, you could argue that the guy thought he was possessed by a demon. All right.
That's what they did argue.
And yeah, and I think that would be something that you'd be allowed to argue, but actually arguing and trying to show the factual existence of demons. And, yeah, I don't think that's going anywhere.
Well, they relied on the temporary insanity argument. They brought the testimony of the nurses that treated him afterwards.
Yeah.
And, he didn't remember anything. He was literally didn't know this. They didn't go very far though. So it's interesting though, to say the least.
Well, insanity is a weird defense because it's not just crazy. Because if you're like Jeffrey Dahmer was crazy, he's crazy. And if you don't think he's crazy, then here, I'll lock you in a room with him and give him a knife and a fork.
Right.
And you're going to believe he's crazy, but it doesn't meet the legal definition of insanity. Insanity, you cannot know right from wrong.
Right.
Which is, it's an almost impossible standard to meet, because if you take any step to cover up the crime, they're going to say, well, you took the steps to cover up the crime because you knew it was wrong.
Right.
You knew it was illegal, and therefore you're not insane. It's such a low threshold for the state or the government prosecution to be able to cross to, get to not insane. One of the jokes that we always said, say about a couple things, the guy who said he was going to use the Bible as his defense to killing an abortion provider.
Right.
And I was just like, yeah, you're going to strap that between your ass and the electric chair.
Exactly.
That would be the only defense the Bible's going to provide you.
Right.
And it's the same thing with the brief argument in insanity. It just doesn't. I don't know of anybody. I don't really, except for the one you just told me about. I don't know of anybody.
In this case, the guy thought that everybody was was a pedophile and they were demons.
Yeah.
He thought he was, but the issue there was they had testimony that this wasn't specific. The thing with this guy is that it was in this isolated moment, right? He'd never had any history of this before, nothing since, right? And, you know, their argument's conveniently now he's possessed by demons, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the example I gave earlier, I can't names, but the person has had a lifelong issue. There's many doctors that have seen him and said that he was schizophrenic and that he would have all these things. And like, when you have that, I think you're going to get to that, because insanity is just that you didn't know what you were doing at the moment. You weren't in your right head. You couldn't have had intent to do anything. Competency is different. Competency, legal competency, is that you just don't understand the consequence of what's going on right now during the proceeding. So you can't be tried or brought to trial because you're not able to have a fair trial or assist your attorney or even understand what's happening and make rational decisions. Different. Insanity is at the time of the crime, right? So it's very difficult, especially when a person doesn't have a real history of schizophrenia, doesn't have a lot of priors in doing in similar manners, and then they try to make that argument. It doesn't really fly very far, you know?
I think, actually, there was one lady in Texas, I think her name was Andrea Yates. She was the one who, like, baptized her children by drowning them in the bathtub.
Oh,
like
I
9 of
remember
them.
that, yeah.
And I think
Did they claim possession on that? She
No.
was not.
They got an insanity defense.
Right.
At first, she was found guilty, but then I think there was a retrial, and she was.
But she had a lot of evidence of postpartum depression. She had a lot. I remember about that case.
Yeah.
She had a lot of evidence to go along with it. Listen, it happens. It's just not very common, especially in something like this, you know, and especially a stabbing. You know, stabbing is probably the most intimate way to kill somebody that there is. Usually, there's rage associated with it. There's
So
usually
strangulation, because strangulation takes a long time.
Well, yeah. Well, either one of these close contact murders, it's usually rage. The first person they usually look to are like relatives or someone that has an intimate relationship, meaning just they know the person for a long time. But yeah, I mean, those cases where it spilled into the law. I remember I tried a funny case. I didn't try a case. It wasn't a trial. I had a case. I thought I talked about this, the zombie.
No, the zombie, where, the guy was.
That was on Halloween, you know?
The psychologist said that seeing zombies was a cultural issue.
Right. So, yeah, I had a guy, just to bring it back, let's talk about it briefly. Quick story. I had a client who was charged with
Child
child abuse, right? And he like hit his kids with a belt, which is horrible, and there's no defense to it, right? But he was from Haiti, not making any defense to it. And when I'd meet the guy, he would speak. It seemed like he spoke good English, right? He would, yes, no. So at some point, though, I got to a point where I had to have really meaningful discussions with him about where we were in the case, what the plea offer was, what the likelihood of success in trial was. And I realized that this guy, at some point it clicked. I'm like, this guy doesn't understand a word I'm saying. And he's been nodding yes and no to me the entire time, but I didn't really need to have much deep discussion at that point. So I brought an interpreter to the next time I spoke with him. I brought a Creole interpreter, and that was a crazy conversation. And I realized, all right, this guy has no idea what the hell I'm talking about. He's been faking English. So, and I think that he's incompetent to proceed, meaning he doesn't understand the consequences. He has mental issues going on. So I file a motion. I file the motion. The judge then, what happens is the court will order evaluations, and it's this really stupid system, and it happens where, we have to, the court will pick doctors randomly, and there's certain doctors that find everybody competent that the state likes because it lets them continue their trial, and there's certain doctors that find everybody incompetent that the defense likes, But it's a frustrating thing because it's like a game, it shouldn't be played. And especially when you have a guy who really is incompetent, like you just need a real assessment, right?
Yep.
So I get the first doctor listens to it and says, holy shit, batshit crazy, can't proceed on anything. Second doctor comes along, and this is a doctor, I wish I could name her name, but she doesn't practice much anymore after this hearing.
Thank God.
She came out, and she was a state doctor. She would always find her incompetent. She said, and meanwhile, the guy would tell me this. Sorry, I forget the part. In my meeting, why I thought he was incompetent, he started telling me about, well, I knew this was going to be bad because I saw flaming chicken in the bathroom when I was using the bathroom. I would see a flaming chicken around me, and I saw it every couple of nights. And he's like, yeah. And also in Haiti, I watched people rise from the dead all the time, and I was a bad omen. I saw, and I watched a person turn from an animal to a human and back, and he was saying this stuff. I'm like, all right, this guy's out to lunch, right? Second doctor comes, does an evaluation, and says he's competent. And I go, what? So I look at the report. I couldn't believe it, right? And in the report, she goes, well, he talked about, flaming chickens over his head, and he mentioned to me that he saw people coming back from the dead and that he's seen animals turn to humans and humans turn to animals. But he's from Haiti, and that is just a cultural thing. That was literally the line. And I remember just laughing out loud when I read that. And I go into court, and the prosecutor goes, oh, are you accepting our findings? I go, no. Did you even read this report? And she's like, no. I'm like, read it. It's the zombie report, I called it. I give it to her. She starts laughing out loud. So we had to actually go. She wouldn't agree that he was crazy. I wouldn't agree that he wasn't crazy, right? So we had to have a hearing in front of the judge to present this. And the doctors come and testify and all this, and the judge makes the call. Hearing is scheduled on Halloween. I swear to God. The day of Halloween, this hearing gets scheduled. And I literally start my cross-exam of this doctor, and I say to her, doctor, do you believe in vampires? And she's like, no. I'm like, well, do you believe in zombies? And she's like, no. I'm like, well, what do you think a zombie is? And I'm slowly milking this, right? She's like, well, a zombie is a person that dies and comes back from the dead. I'm like, okay. So my client said that he saw zombies in Haiti, though, right? She goes, well, yeah, but you said that's cultural, right? She goes, yes. I go, so if I saw a person, who died come back from the dead in Davie, would that be a zombie, right? And she goes, yes. I go, but if it's from Haiti, that's cultural, right? And she's getting pissed. She's like, no. You know what I meant. I'm like, I don't know what you meant. Let's take you through some other...
Actually, yeah, her report made absolutely no sense whatsoever.
The best part is we get to a point where we talk about animals changing to I'm like, let's talk about werewolves. And she goes, I didn't say anything about werewolves. I'm like, he did though, right? She goes, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you said that a person changed from an animal to a human or human to animal, right? Yeah. She's like, isn't that a werewolf? No. She's like, what could it be? She goes, a lichen. I'm like, oh, a lichen. Let's talk about lichens for a while, right? And we literally did 4 hours, and the judge is dying. And they found their comment. That was with the zombie report. And that transcript got pretty big. People started ordering it because they heard about it. It was a lot of fun. That was my Halloween fun.
I had
one of the cases.
Lady in North Carolina, and I mean, she seemed like, just when I went in to visit her in the jail, she just seemed like a normal woman, right? Like she looked like a 50-something-year-old mom, and just very plain, not very unassuming. And I start talking to her, and I'm like, I can't believe this lady smokes crack. Right? And, I mean, she just doesn't look like, what you would picture a crackhead to be. And then she starts talking. And she, she claimed to have been at every single, mass casualty event. She's like, well, I was in the Twin Towers on September 11th, and Jesus fortunately came down and told me, you have to get out of here. And so, I mean, she had stories like that, and I'm just like, because you have to write you have to write in your motion why you think the person is incompetent, right? So I'm just like, hold up, slow down.
Like
Jesus.
A, B,
Okay.
B, subsection B1.
Chased by the devil. Okay. All right. And
They found her competent?
well, yeah, and the judge, we get the competency exam back, and the judge reads it, and he's like, okay, Mr. Dyer, are you willing to stipulate to competency? No. Absolutely not.
Absolutely not, right. We're going to have a hearing on that, Judge,
Yeah, I was just like, absolutely not. I will not stipulate to competency on this woman. She was a sandwich short of a picnic.
Right.
But, I mean,
Go ahead, finish
Oh,
it up.
just her communication. Anybody who claims that they hear God audibly, all right, automatically gets put in the crazy box to me. And because, God wouldn't even have to tell me anything important, all right? If a God came down and spoke to me, I'd just be so blown away. He could be like, nice shirt. And I'd be buying pink shirts and handing them out to everybody. And,
Right.
And Jesus talking to you or God talking to you should be a very profound experience.
Right.
It shouldn't make you go smoke crack.
Well, let me ask you this. What is your take on the paranormal and the demons? Do you have any experiences you want to share that made you think twice?
Well, there's one person who has told me that they saw something supernatural. That I believe it was my father.
Right.
And it was
He
just.
wouldn't make that up.
Yeah, he lived in a house in Maryland that is an old house when he was in test pilot school. And it was out in the middle of nowhere. And he woke up in the middle of the night and saw something at the bottom of his bed that he thought was human, but it didn't look human. And then he got up because he reached over and grabbed a shotgun. And when he looked up, the thing was gone. And then he comes down the hallway, and his roommate came out and said, "Did you just see what I saw?"
Oh, man.
And so they both saw it. As far, I don't know. I have a little bit different take on things. I try to look at things through a more realistic lens. Like, for example, when my grandmother was passing away, all right, it was kind of a long, drawn-out process where she's slowly losing her mind, and then.
Right.
But one of the things that would happen is, I'll tell you a story. I can't tell it on here because
Right.
the people involved. But my grandma was across the street at the person's house who lives across the street from my mom. And, I was trying to calm her down, and she said, well, Harry called me and told me he's coming to get me. And that was my grandfather. My grandfather's been dead since I was 17. And then she started going into different conversations that she'd had with other family members, her brothers and sisters, most of whom had already all passed away. And, when in this life, it's like we're programmed on one wavelength.
Right.
And you only see and notice things on that one wavelength.
Right.
And, I don't think, I'm getting any trouble for saying that I've used shrooms before.
Right.
All right. But when you use shrooms, you start seeing things on different wavelengths. You start noticing things that your body,
receptive
that you've tuned out.
Right, right.
Like you hear the wind blowing a little more, you hear every animal, things like that. So when somebody's passing away and they're seeing these things, it's very real to them. And, I kind of look at it as you're transitioning from one wavelength to the
another,
next.
right.
So it's kind of like the door kind of opens up and you're seeing through a little bit.
Right.
And so, because I know that those calls from my grandfather, that didn't happen. I know they didn't, but to her they did. And so it might be something where you're seeing, like, into, lack of a better term, the next dimension or the next,
Right.
I
agree with
and that's what happens with a lot of people when they're passing away, is they start to see the people that have gone before them.
Right, that makes sense. Well, I agree with that analysis. I actually had a medium on, which is fantastic. I love him. He's a great guy. And it's very hard to not believe a lot of things that he's saying because he doesn't have an interest in lying. He speaks very, very unique things that'll take you aback. Just one quick story. We'll end the podcast with this episode. But I've had experiences that I can't explain. Put it that way. I don't begin to chalk them up to this or demons or whatever it may be.
Mine was LSD and shrooms.
One time I was dating. Well, that's your own thing. I wasn't on this at this point. Well, I was dating a girl, and she was at a college I didn't go to, and I was used to go up on the weekends to visit her. She calls me. She's like, "You need to come up this weekend." I wasn't planning on going up. She's like, "What?" I'm like, "Why?" "Well, my friend's coming up, and she's a medium." I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm not interested." Right? Like at that point, I had very skeptical, and well, you want to come up because it's really you want to see what she does. It's kind of cool. So I go up. And they have the whole Ouija board set up, right? It's during the day, though. And she's bringing one person on by one and communicating. And she's literally, you're trying to follow if she's doing the writing, and you're trying to see the pressure on her hand to see if she's pushing the thing. And it looks pretty like you can't, it looks pretty like she's not pushing it, like something's moving it, but I don't know, right? And I'm watching her go one person by one person, I'm observing. And she's saying that she's speaking to a guardian angel. That's what she would always say. I was speaking to your guardian. And then every once in a while, the thing would go wild and some nasty stuff would come out. And she's like, oh, people, like, there's spirits that jump on. This is what she would say. So I don't know that I buy any of it, right? I'm watching, and I'm literally systematically trying to break her down, right? Anyway, it comes to me, I do it hesitantly. So if I start asking her questions, there's no chance she would know, right? Like, just like you would do, right?
Yeah.
I ask her my mother's maiden name. No one in that room knew my mother's maiden name, right? And my mother's maiden name is, you know, from Morocco. Like, it's not something like Smith. You can't take a guess, right? Spells out my mother's maiden name. Couldn't answer. I couldn't figure that out, right? I'm like, and even the girl I was dating didn't know. Nobody knew this, right? I'm thinking maybe it's some mind reading, or maybe I'm like staring at the letter ahead of time. I don't know. Kept doing it, and giving me answers to stuff that blew my mind. I was like, and it was getting scary. It got to a point where it was scary. Like, I was like, this is freaky. And then at one point I get real crafty, and I go, all right, what's the mileage on my car? Now, this is the time when mileage wasn't digital. Remember the turnover things?
Well, yeah.
So it starts to give me a number, and I write, this is a true story. I write the numbers down. And on the last number, it flickers between a 3 and a 4. It's like flickering. And I'm like, what does that mean? She's like, I don't, you know, the medium's like, I don't know. So I get done with the session. I'm a little freaked out. I run right downstairs to look and check the mileage on my car. Di, when I tell you it was to the number, and the last digit was between 3 and 4, about to turn over.
Yeah.
So after that, I don't really question things much. I've had my experiences, but a lot of these things I can't. You chalk up to, like, you wake up in the middle of the night. You know, there's literally scientific explanations for waking up in the night. Sleep paralysis, right? I've had that. That's freaky, you know. But I don't have the answers to it. But I think they're very interesting topics, especially on episodes coming close to Halloween. I think it's always fun to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, what's your take? Anything you want to add on?
No, I mean, I'm not sure where I stand on it. I mean, I definitely believe that there are forces and powers at work in the world that are beyond our control and beyond our knowledge.
Agree. But we will agree that they've not been successful in court. So
yeah,
the demons need better lawyers, right? So I'm game. I'll go do it.
I'll do it.
After the zombie report, we could do anything, you know? But thank you so much for coming on, man. Happy Halloween to you and your family. Hope you enjoy. Come by our neighborhood. Our neighborhood goes crazy if you want. I don't know how your neighborhood. How's your neighborhood during Halloween?
Fireworks.
No, I'm done with fireworks. Don't worry, I might be at least for a year. No, but like, do you do the trick or treat in your neighborhood? Is it a big neighborhood for trick or treating?
Yeah.
Well, if you want to hop over, you're welcome to. Even though our kids are not little anymore, we're going to be one trick or treating, probably getting ankle monitors put on us. But
So I'm dressing up like Caitlyn Jenner this Halloween.
oh, jeez, there it is. There it is. It was coming. It was bound to come. Thank you for coming on. Love you, buddy. Thanks for coming on. And
Take care.
thank you to all my viewers and listeners. Thanks for watching Two Taps and Friends. Please like and subscribe to the channel. When you like and subscribe to the channel, it gives us more outreach, gives us more juice. We can bring other kind of amazing guests on like we always do. We appreciate you all. You can find us on YouTube. We're on Spotify. We're on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts. We're literally everywhere. Instagram, Facebook, everywhere. Also, we have Two Taps and Swag. There's a link at the bottom for swag. If you want to buy swags, there's cool sweatshirts, hats, all kinds of stuff you want to buy it. If you don't buy it. Just keep listening and watching. We appreciate you all. Love you all. Thanks for watching and listening. Goodbye. Cut.